It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Welcome back to Confidence in Bloom, the podcast for women who are ready to release self-doubt, reconnect with who they truly are, and step fully into their next chapter with confidence. This month, we're diving into our theme, Unapologetically Unique, because your power isn't fitting in, it's in owning what makes you different. Today's conversation is such a powerful one. I'm joined by Printz, a Harvard-trained immunity to change coach and adaptive growth strategist who helps women uncover the hidden patterns and assumptions that keep them stuck in people-pleasing, comparison, and self-doubt. If you've ever felt like you're holding back parts of yourself, questioning your voice, or waiting to feel ready before showing up fully, this episode is for you. Oh, welcome, Mary. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Tina. This is such a pleasure to be here with you.
Excellent. And we're going to have an awesome conversation because you and I are on the same page. Like we walk the same path. So this is going to be excellent. Now, you do really powerful work around hidden assumptions. What are some of the most common internal blocks that stop women from being unapologetically themselves?
Yes. Some of the most common blocks or assumptions, right? Okay, so now I think, and I'll just back up just a little bit, is that I think a lot of us have had moments where we can leave a conversation and we replay it in our heads, right? Like over and over again. What did I say the right thing? How did it come across? And we overthink and we can kind of leave feeling a little bit disconnected, right? So for a long time, I thought I just needed a little bit more confidence. But really, I was trying to make sure in the background that I was accepted, that I was being accepted. And then what shifted was realizing how much I was kind of holding back and slowly letting myself show up more honestly, right? And then things start to feel a little bit lighter and a little more genuine, right? So some of the assumptions, so just in that little phrase right there that I shared is that the assumption is that I needed more confidence in order to have better connection. But really, if we go back to your theme, being unapologetically you, the assumption is that it's not safe to be the real me.
And I'm not accepted as the real me.
That's right. I could be rejected. I could be abandoned. I could be ashamed. I could be humiliated or embarrassed. Whatever it is, that will affect my belonging.
Oh my goodness, that is so true, right? Because you look at, now I'm just imagining myself in a conversation with, I'm going to say people that I feel my best at, right? Mm-hmm. But I know I keep my voice quiet, right? So I either don't say a lot or I say very, very little, like, or what I'm really thinking isn't coming out of my mouth. But the reality is I know they're not going to accept me for the thoughts that are really coming up in my mind. They're going to look at me and go, oh my God, you always have to be so different, right? Or God, Tina, can you ever say anything that agrees with what we're saying, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. So really, what becoming unapologetically ourselves is that we have to overcome these internal systems that make authenticity feel unsafe, not safe, right? It's not safe to speak that out loud or to be honest about this situation because I could be rejected, I could lose credibility, whatever it is, and we all want to avoid judgment.
Right. Especially negative judgment, right? Like nobody wants to be told you always have to be different, right? Because even though, yeah, like and different generally means you're unique, right? Can't you be like the rest of us?
Mhm.
Right. And the reality of that is the rest of us don't always agree with what one person is saying, but that one person seems to have like a power over us that makes us feel that we have to be like that person.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow.
And that is what we refer to as we've been shaped by this external validation system. That's what it is. It's an
Yeah.
external validation system. And that identity that we carry is tied to our roles, our expectations, and our achievement,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
and so being unapologetically you, it can be confusing. It can be kind of threatening. And some people I could even see it being feeling like irresponsible.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this situation, I need to maintain this type of image, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Especially with women. Like I don't know what men are like when they're talking, if they feel that they must feel this, they're humans, right? But
Mhm.
women, I guess because I talk most with women, this is a common thing with women, right? Like I'm not going to say what I'm really thinking because she's not going to like it, or she's going to make fun of me, or she's not going to accept me as her friend if I feel this way, right? So this is common. Like, so I mean, basically, if you're feeling like this, just know that you're not alone. You're not the only one, but it's okay for you to step out of your, I'm going to call it your comfort zone, because we kind of wear this as our clothes, right? Like we become that after a while, right? We don't want to speak, so we stop ourselves, and then it becomes so natural that we stop talking, right?
So what we do is we adapt, right? And
Right.
we call it adaptive development. So we adapt in order to accommodate these expectations and these rules and to accommodate this external validation, right? So I think what you hit on there, Tina, was something really important. What is the cost? Because there's always a cost involved. What is the cost of not being who you really are, of not being unique, of not, you know, just being genuine in these relationships, right? In these situations. So, if we look at it in terms of the cost, because there's always a cost, right? Internally, externally. So sometimes the cost is overthinking, you know, what we said, what we didn't say, whatever it is, or feeling like we're on or performing instead of just being,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or not feeling as deeply connected in our relationships as we'd like to be, right?
Yeah.
Because there's, there's an element of safety in being vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? So, it's not safe. So therefore we don't have that deep connection that we so, desire, right?
Yeah.
And
And
then,
then I think we also pick up different behaviors to hide our true, authentic thoughts and feelings, right? That's when we start people pleasing and imposter syndrome, and all those things start to creep up, right? Because we don't know how to be who we really are anymore.
yeah, and it's so effortful. It takes so much effort to put on, to cover ourselves, really, to protect ourselves, to protect these assumptions that we have really operating in the background, right? There's a lot of mental noise going on. And so, it takes a lot of effort it's, and there's a lot of discomfort in there too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Now, when we talk about like authenticity, right? Now, I've heard some people don't like the word, right? Because authentic means, it can mean truthful, but it can also just mean like, roots, right? Like where I really come from, right? But let's talk more about, sort of how it's generalized, right? Why does being yourself sometimes feel like unsafe? Like why? Like I get, like when we're talking about this whole, not being accepted and all. But why do we allow that? Like, why is it, like, even as an adult, we should feel like I can be who I want to be, but we still allow that, feeling of not being good enough to run the show. Like, why do we do that? What is that?
Well, that is what we refer to as our immune system. And so we have an immune system to change, right? So what happens is throughout our lives, and generally when we're younger, we encounter lots of different situations and, and relationships, and we adapt. So we formulate these beliefs, these assumptions that, okay, I tried that, and you know what, that wasn't safe. And so therefore, and these patterns stick with us. And so they continue to operate in the background, right? So we have this hidden set of beliefs and commitments that are designed to protect us from psychological risk, especially rejection or loss of identity. So it's not just what we're thinking, it's also how we're wired to stay safe, right? Because self-preservation is of utmost importance for the human being, right? So they're protecting something that feels far more important than whatever's going on, right? Than that deeper connection. But there's something that's really not safe for me right now. And many people are not aware of it. And that's why we call them hidden assumptions.
Right.
Because they're operating in the background, but they are not aware this is going on. So when I'm taking someone through, we're mapping out, some assumptions, we've set an intended goal. I want to be more vulnerable in my relationships. I want to strengthen my relationships. I want to improve my communication, whatever the goal might be, the improvement goal. Then we map it out and we start to surface some of these hidden commitments, right? And so what happens, let's say, I want to be more authentic. I want to be, more honest and speak up. Speaking up, right, is a big one, right? But yet we can have this hidden commitment running in the background. I'm committed to not being rejected. Well, if I am committed to not being rejected, there's no darn way I'm going to speak up, right? Because it just doesn't feel safe, right? Or I'll lose respect or I'll lose connection, right? So therefore we hold back, we over explain, we people please, and sometimes we even, we're just talking nonstop, right? Because we're trying to justify and all these other things that we do to try and keep this immune system continually operating.
Yeah.
But
so
when we expose it,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you said the immune system, and I mean, I know myself, and I'm going to assume most of our listeners see the immune system as more like a physical sickness, right? Keeping away, like fighting away physical, like virus, bacteria, that kind of stuff. But you're saying that it's also working against the, that feeling of not being accepted, right? Like it's also a mental immune system. Is it the same system that we're talking about, or is it just another like system in our body? Because God knows we have so many, right?
we do. Truly, we are a miracle, our human body. So we have this immune system to change, and that is different than our immune system that keeps us healthy and strong physically, right? So both of them are protecting something. Our physical immune system protects us from disease and all sorts of other things. Our immune system to change, coined by, Dr. Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy, is a hidden set of beliefs and commitments designed to protect us from risk, particularly
Okay.
psychological rest, right?
Okay. Yeah. So thank you for clarifying that, because
Yeah,
now I get it.
right. So it's how we are wired, and it's our, our mental operating system. So and it just becomes, it's an adaptation that we have created in order to survive, right? But we can overturn those belief systems. We can overturn it by a series of, you know, steps that we do, a series of activities and experiments that we do to overturn that. And that is what helps people become, to really show up truly as who they want to be, and show up, without this intimidation or fear of not being accepted or of not belonging.
Right. And that's not to say that, you don't have to say what you're thinking, right? Like
That's right.
some people are, they just don't talk, and that doesn't mean that they're hiding something, right? But if you want to say something, you can say it the way like it feels in your heart, right? Like you can just say what's on your mind, right? And we have to learn, to accept people, like learn to be accepted, right? For who you are, right? By opening your mouth or by doing whatever it is that feels right for you at the time. Now, let's talk comparison, because I think that's kind of what this comes down to, right? We're constantly comparing ourselves to others, right? And not necessarily, that I want to be better or I want to be worse, but we compare, she does this and I don't. What's really happening beneath the surface when we are doing that comparison?
Well, comparison is really, it's almost like, the evil twin. It's like you're either better than or you're less than, right? So it's it's never a healthy thing to engage in. And it stems from, judgment. And so we're looking at it. But if we look at comparison as an external validation, then we are looking at things externally, as opposed to having our own internal locus of control. This is what I value. These are my core values. This is who I am. Authentically me, genuine, these are my beliefs, and I'm firmly rooted in those. And you know what? Whatever is happening externally, that does not change my positioning here, right? It does not change who I am. If this person accepts me or not, it doesn't change who I am. If this person, I perceiving them, our perceptions, really create a multitude of, judgments and criticisms and issues, right? But if we are really looking at through the lens of, that is another human being, and you value them and you value that individual for who they are, what they're bringing to the table, just showing up and just engaging in a conversation. And we're not influenced as much. Now, to a certain extent, we're always going to be somewhat influenced by external situations. But if we have this strong core sense of value, and, it doesn't matter what, who you are, where you are, what you bring, I value as a human being. That's going to really bring far more engagement, and it's going to bring deeper connection, and we always come away feeling better.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you what's coming up for me. So I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on what I noticed, and maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but what I noticed is women who are constantly judging others and comparing themselves to others and criticizing is the word that's coming to my mind. They're often very disconnected from who they truly are. right? And maybe it's the same thing. Like maybe it's, they don't feel accepted. Maybe they don't feel, that they belong or that they're, equal to the humans that are around them. But I find the people that are always judging and always criticizing, they're probably very disconnected from who they truly are. They don't even know who they truly are.
Well, yeah, quite possibly is that they have adapted to such an extent that they don't feel safe being who they are. That wasn't accepted, and therefore they've had to perform. They've had to be perfect. They've had to somehow adapt in such a way, and they have these very high or whatever type of expectations. And so, to say that they're disconnected, could possibly be true. There could be a lot of different things going on for those who judge, criticize, condemn, or complain, right? And so, but what we want to do is we want people to be able to grow their own capacity to be able to connect with people in a very meaningful way. And they're growing in that capacity. And so what happens then is they have compassion for the other person. And
Yeah.
when we can have compassion for the other person, we don't see them as judgmental or whatever. We see them as, oh, that could be an area of wounding. That could be an area of some deep hurt,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And so when we look at it from a lens of, I care about people, I genuinely care about people, and you know what? And I see you. I see you. I see that person inside of you that's hurting. I see that person inside of you that wants to be authentic and genuine and that wants a deep relationship with someone, but doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah. So how do you, okay. So, I mean, I know with coaching, there's so many different ways of allowing that possibility in, but what is, maybe something we could tell our listeners, what's one way of being able to do that? I know I would use like the first, second, third position, right? Like what position are you in right now? Let's switch that, right? What would you do?
Yeah, so I would say, I just want to first iterate that there's nothing wrong with them, right? There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them, when we have these adaptations. But if there's something that people would, if there's something that they could do, I would say increasing this capacity develops over time, but you have to be intentional. And so, how can you be intentional moving forward, right? Because, we've learned, we have these patterns ingrained in us, how to shape ourselves around expectations and whatever else. But start to notice the expectations in your life. And when you create that awareness, it opens up a new level of understanding. And so then you become more of an observer. You become an observer of what's actually happening right here. Oh, I see there's some expectations. I see, oh, this is how I'm showing up with this expectation, right? And choosing, and there are appropriate times when to speak up and when not to speak up, right? You know, and we want to be professional, we want to be, wise in our actions. But maybe take a moment to say something and be vulnerable with someone who you feel is safe, with a thought that you have been carrying, and share that. And do that little experiment and see, how do they respond? Is this actually safe to share this thought with them. And I think taking small, teeny tiny steps to show up that way, I think will really help individuals to really grow in this area.
Yeah. Like you said, like baby steps, and
Mhm.
try with one person that, you can feel the most safe with, right? Start there.
Yeah.
And then slowly it'll become more comfortable. And then you kind of expand yeah. And it's not easy work, right? And you have to start with the easiest thing, right? That just in case I'm judged, this is not a big deal, right? And then slowly that will become a little bit bigger. And yeah. So yeah, I love that. I love that answer.
Yeah. And, or even just share your perspective on something, right? But I think also take note of where you're relinquishing your identity to external validation, right? Am I doing this because I really enjoy doing it, or I really want to, or because it's an expectation, or I want to fit in or belong, or I don't want to get punished, whatever it might be, right? And we get trained in these things, right? Throughout our lives, um, you know, and so creating that awareness is quite pivotal in creating change in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about moving from insight into real change, why do so many women stay stuck even though, or even when they know what's holding them back, right? Lots of women are aware of what is holding them back. And it could be the assumption, I call it blocks, right? But what would you say? Like, what would you say why they do that?
I would say change is hard. Change is hard. And there are a lot of different factors at play. And so, change, we set these goals. We can even do New Year's resolutions, right? They set a goal, but then it just kind of fizzles out after, because we realize change is work. It is work. And it's a lot harder than we often think, because oftentimes we have these assumptions going on in the background. So let's say I want to show up, I want to speak up, in a meeting. Let's say I want to speak up more, whether it's with my friends or at work or at home or with family, whatever it might be. But then you have these behaviors, right? And it's kind of like, I want to lose, 10 pounds, but I keep a bucket of ice cream in the freezer, right? It's kind of working against your goal. So then you have these behaviors. I want to speak up, but yet what do? I hold back, I filter, I adapt, I accommodate, and yeah. And so, and I, I just kind of become small, right? And I don't voice my opinions or perspectives. So therefore, we can then have a hidden commitment, like, what am I committed to? Really, that's running in the background is that I'm trying to avoid being rejected, trying to avoid some humiliation, whatever it might be, or shame. And then what happens is I develop this assumption: if I speak up, then I could lose connection. I lose connection. So therefore, if that's running in the background, do you think I'm ever going to achieve that goal?
Yeah.
No.
Well, and I think, like, when you said change is hard, sometimes it's not the actual change work that's hard. It's the effects of the change that's hard, right? Because the people that know you for being the carpet, right? That now you're starting to get a backbone and speak up for yourself. They're going to be like, hey, ho, like, what's going on here? Like, yesterday you let me walk all over you. Today you're not. I don't like this new person, right? And so you have to be, when you're changing, you need to be willing, right? Willing is the best word I can come up with, to allow these people to leave your life, right? Or at least back off from your life. Because I mean, there's some people that can never leave your back, right? I mean, that's just some people, it's impossible. But they're not going to accept you for who you were before, when you were putty in their hands. Now that you're, speaking up for yourself and, protecting you, right? They're not going to accept you the same, right? And so you have to be willing to do that. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of that whole external validation system, right? Is that, sometimes we have to let things go because there is going to be pushback, right? When we create change, there's going to be pushback for you internally, but there's also going to be pushback externally.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but the most important part of the change process is overturning those assumptions. Because more than likely, you will not be able to achieve that goal without overturning those assumptions, because they are protecting you.
Yeah.
And so if they are protecting you, they're not going to let go. So you have to prove, and, through these simple experiments, you have to prove, and, through a very, systematic process, is that it is safe.
Yeah.
But you created this assumption at a time, in which you needed to, at a stage in your life, because it wasn't safe then or whatever. And so, you had to, this is the assumption that you came up with, right? Because our brain is always trying to resolve things. It's always trying to, bring things full circle. Okay, I've resolved this. This is the truth.
Yeah.
But is that the truth now at this stage
Now.
in your life? And, and that's where I think coaching becomes so powerful,
For
because
sure.
we set a specific goal and we go through a very structured process and we begin to overturn these assumptions. And people are like, wow, this is literally transforming the way I engage, the way I build relationships, the way I interact, the way I live my life. And yeah, and that is what makes it possible. It's by overturning those, those rules and those assumptions, those commitments that we established, in our
Which
earlier
can
life.
make relationships even stronger, right? Like those good relationships that you have, right? When you start speaking up for yourself, the people that you're in relationship with can look at you and go, well, holy man, I would have never thought that you had that voice, right? And be proud of that, and be, even more intrigued in what more you have to share. And, your connection becomes stronger.
Yeah, because people, and whether it's, you need to, you don't need to be so exuberant or whatever it is, either end of the spectrum, people truly want to know. They want to know more about you. They want to know the real you. That's what enhances our connections. That's what enhances our relationships. Oh, she just, oh, I never knew she or he thought that. Wow, and what makes us, strengthens our relationships is when we have people that, they don't necessarily align with our belief systems, or, but that they actually can gently challenge us, because that was what makes for engaging conversations, and like, and where people get to really just show up and just say, this is what I believe in. Their passion and zeal and zest for whatever it is they're discussing really comes through. And yeah, people really thrive on deeper connection. And when we loosen these assumptions, right, when we loosen them, then that opens the gateway for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this conversation because it really truly shows like the deeper you want to go, the deeper your connection goes, right? And it's, I mean, yeah, there's going to be those people that are superficial and they're like, ah, she's too much for me. But really, that too much is what we need, right? And especially over the last, 5-10 years, like people were losing that deep connection with others, right? And so now people are like, oh, I need more. I want more, right? Like I want to go deep, right? I want to actually connect truly with you, right? I don't want just the coffee conversation, right? Or the standing in the lineup together conversation. I want real conversation. And that's really how, Confidence in Bloom started, right? Was because I needed that conversation. And I love talking with women that want to go deep, right? And so, I mean, we've gone deep. This is deep, right? I mean, people,
It is.
It's
pretty high level for sure.
Yeah. We don't talk filters, in the lineup at the coffee shop, or, we just don't do that. And so we don't think about them. But I want to believe that people will, question themselves. Why did I say that? Like, what was the true meaning of me making that comment? Right. I hear my daughter say that, Mom, I don't know why I even said that. There's a reason. There's a reason why those words come to your mouth, right? Be curious. Think about it. Like, what were you looking for? What kind of an answer did you really expect to get when you asked that question or gave that answer? Right? Yeah. I love this.
I do too. I love it. And so, I'll give you an example, a little story here. I had people really, and if you can talk about your emotions, how you are feeling, I am feeling right now, really embarrassed. I am feeling, really exposed or inadequate, whatever it might be. And I'll give you this little story is that, I had a doctor's appointment. I showed up and there was an accident, all sorts of different things happening. And I showed up and I was, I was late. I was like 10 minutes late. And the receptionist just blasted me. And, and then, so I'm waiting and I'm just like, oh. And so then I went in to see the physician and immediately, how are you doing today? And I said, you know what? I feel so ashamed. And the physician looked at me and just held my hand and said, tell me how come.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I shared, I said, I arrived late. I don't like to arrive late. And you know what? And I just felt awful. And I felt ashamed that I was late for a really important appointment. And I didn't want to affect your schedule. And, and you know what? What it brought out in that physician was their humanity.
I was going to say life happens. Like,
Yeah.
We have to prepare for stuff like that.
That's right. But what it did for him when I shared how I was feeling, what it did is it allowed that physician, that probably was a moment in their day that they rarely experience. Someone being vulnerable with their emotions, saying, and what it did, it stuck with them. And yeah, and they even actually wrote me a note, sent me an email the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think the point is that when we share our vulnerability, our emotions, whether we're feeling, inferior, insecure, afraid, scared, then what it does is it allows them to be more human.
Yeah.
That's what we're all craving.
And relate with you, right? Because every single human on this earth knows what it's like to feel shame and guilt and embarrassment, right? They might not admit it, right? But if you're in a room like that in a doctor's office, right? That gives them, if they take it, that gives them the opportunity to go, holy man, like I know what that feels like. I know how I felt at that moment. I know how you're feeling.
Mhm.
Right now, I've also been hearing, and we're gonna start running out of time here, but you know, when someone is telling you a story, you know, the response, I understand, is actually false, right? Because I don't live in your body, and
Okay.
so I cannot understand what you are feeling. I can, you know, relate with what your situation is, but I can't really understand your story and your, you know, I mean, comprehend and understand are two different things, right? But I don't know what you're feeling. I can imagine, I can relate with your story, but I can't understand what your story is. But this, you know, kind of scenario where the doctor's like, wow, like I've been there. I know what you're feeling and I'm sorry that you feel that way, right? It just, it brings you to a level of common, right? We're both, we have that in common. We're both human,
Mhm.
right?
And and that brings us to, the whole empathy piece, right? And I think um you know, high schoolers, junior high schoolers, they get it so well because you know what? They go, I feel you, man. You know,
Right.
I
And
go,
they actually mean
that's
it
it.
when they say it. Yeah.
I feel you, man. It's not like I understand. I don't, like I feel you, man. Like,
Yeah.
like
Like I
that
can see
hurts.
what you're feeling and I'm feeling it with you. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I love it. So, Mary, tell me, what's one small but powerful shift someone can make today to start showing up more fully as themselves?
Oh, um, one small shift, I would say be an observer. Begin to observe how you show up with different people. And then take note of how you feel. Go inside. How do you feel internally when you show up with these people? Do you feel insecure? Do you feel, take a breath, sigh of relief, safety? How do you feel? Do you feel like you're constantly trying to prove, right? And is it okay to make a mistake? And I think if we can take note of how we are feeling in these different situations, maybe just pick two people. And I think make mental note and begin to observe, how am I behaving? And that awareness will actually make an incredible shift on its own.
I think so too. I love that answer actually. And because once you're aware, you can't be unaware again, right? Unless you block it out. But once you're aware, you know it. Yeah.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
someone is afraid of being judged or rejected, and I know we talked about that a lot at the beginning here, for who they truly are, what would you want them to hear?
Someone is afraid of being rejected
Yeah. Or judged. Yeah.
or judged. Yeah, being judged they're both, very significant, can have significant impacts. Is that if they have that fear, think about where, track back, where did this come from? Where did this come from? And is that still valid in my life right now?
Yeah. And would you say, just out of curiosity, would you say when someone is always feeling rejected by the same person or the same people, would you say is it usually about them or is it usually about the other person, the person that's doing the rejecting?
Well, it's always about ourselves, right? We can't control other people. We can only control
Right,
our
right,
own side of
right.
the street, right? So it's always about ourselves. What's in me that's causing me to respond in this way, react in this way? And if I am reacting in this way, what is the trigger, right? I am feeling, ooh, not enough. I don't measure up. Which is all about comparison, right? And so what is it triggering in me? It's always about us, right? So many people want to project it onto the other person, but it's always about us. And so we have to go inside. And for some people, that's not safe. That's a hard thing to do, right? Particularly, right now, everyone wants to, look externally, but go inside and really, we say, name it to tame it, right? Name that emotion. And when you speak it out, I am feeling really insecure right now. You know what? I am feeling, um, I'm feeling incredible, joy right now. Whatever it is, if we can name it, then what happens is that will actually help us not only regulate ourselves, but it will help us have a deeper connection with ourselves. And that is how we increase our connection with other people, is we have to first we first can develop a connection with ourselves, right? But we have to be aware of these different emotions that we're carrying and that are being triggered with different people, different circumstances, right? Because it all goes back to us.
I really like that answer. It's not really what I wanted to hear, but I do like that answer, because nobody wants to know that it's about me, right? Like it's not about me. It's she did this, he did this, right? He always does this, right? I mean, us women always do that, right? It's always about you did this and you did that, right? But the truth is, right? Like, look inside, and why are you really feeling the way you're feeling?
And that will identify the meaning we are making out of it. If the meaning I'm making, the meaning I am creating based on what someone else has said, out of their own woundedness, out of their own whatever, the meaning that I'm making out of that, if that affects my identity, then I need to go inside myself and say, okay, I want to live by my own core values. I believe this. This is what is going to be a pillar of strength for me, is that I am an incredibly clever, brilliant, kind-hearted, caring individual. I value that. And, and that is where we have to determine, okay, is this a safe place for me to be? Right? But we always want to not have that external validation system. Validate ourselves for who we are, right? Who am I? I am, a beautiful, wonderful, created human being, right? And, you can bring in the faith element, created in God's image, and, all sorts of beautiful things about who I am as a person. And when we begin to have this compassion for ourselves, then we can have compassion for other people. And so then what they're projecting onto us doesn't really impact us as much. Right?
Yeah.
And
what's coming up for me right now is, if you can't accept yourself for who you are fully, nobody else can either. Right? If you don't love you, who else can love you? Right? Fully. Right? I mean, we all know we're all loved, right, in our own way. But if I don't love myself completely and whole, right, I won't allow anyone else to love me completely and whole the same way.
And so, if we keep handing over, relinquishing our identity to people around us, then who are we when we're all alone? Who are we when we are standing there and, when we have to live our own life, right?
Yeah.
And so, that is a really important thing that we need to come to terms with. And there's always going to be parts of ourselves that we're not always happy with and that we want to work on.
Right.
And that is a part of human nature is that we intrinsically all want to grow and learn and improve ourselves, right? That's what relationships help us improve ourselves. Work environments, culture helps us improve ourselves, right? And so that's why, if we really truly want to be the best version of ourselves, we need to be working on various aspects of ourselves at any given time.
Yeah.
And that is also showing value for who I am.
Absolutely.
Right? I am so valuable.
And knowing, like, it's also showing that you know your value,
yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to pour time and attention and devotion into how I can improve myself, how I can grow myself.
Yeah.
And just like, your whole podcast. And then you can bloom. And it's like a perpetual blooming process, because you're going to bloom over here in this part of your life and bloom here and bloom here. And it's like, and that's how we can fully show up, as our whole self.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Is there anything else you want to add to our conversation here before we finish up?
Well, I just want to say this has been an absolute pleasure. And I think being your true self isn't about standing out more, or, having a bigger personality, or minimizing yourself or in any way. It's about feeling more whole and less conflicted inside.
Yeah.
And that's when, life becomes less effortful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, do you have any programs that you want to let our listeners know about?
Yes. So at Mary Printz Coaching and Consulting, we offer individual coaching, but also right now we have a women's cohort, Women Who Lead cohort. It's an 8-week cohort. And and so you can check that out. It's a fabulous program. It's virtual, and so it's accessible, very accessible for, wherever you live. And we dive deep into, as you know, I love the depth, because when we go deep, then we can surface a lot of these things that are hidden and holding us back from really achieving the goals that we desire. And so we go deep, and it's in 8 sessions, and it is, we just get the most absolutely fabulous, wonderful people, and who are really ready and willing to dive deep.
Love that. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love this conversation. My heart feels so full. I know that there's a lot that, our listeners can reach out to you and ask you more about, because, we talked about a lot of stuff, and if anyone of you would like to talk with Mary, please reach out to her, because I know she's amazing and she can help the world. This conversation was such a beautiful reminder that confidence isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been before the world told you to be anything else. Your uniqueness is not something to tone down, fix, or question. It's something to honor, trust, and fully express. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your wisdom and for the work you do in helping women step into deeper self-awareness and lasting change. And to everyone listening, if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it, tag us, and let us know what stood out most. Because the more we own who we are, the more we give other women permission to do the same. So until next time, keep blooming into the most confident, authentic self.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.